We'll spend the next hour talking about strategy and product strategy as I have come to develop my own framework over time, which is based on mostly experience at Booking.com, where I've spent most of my career. I'll give you a quick intro on the agenda. So first, I'll spend a little bit of time on who I am. Then David's framework, the meat of the presentation, I would say. And then most of you have been so kind to share in a survey which frameworks you are using today, and I'll share the data about that. You couldn't choose mine yet, so I'm not offended that it's not there. Very quickly about me, I have a technical background. I studied artificial intelligence in Amsterdam. Started as an engineer at a company called TomTom, which you're probably familiar with. Then I joined Hives, which was the I like to say the Facebook of the Netherlands before Facebook became the Facebook of the Netherlands. So a local social network. I was CPTO there, and then I joined Booking, where I made a complete transition into the product side. Started on mobile and actually quite soon headed up the product team, which was when I started around 12 teams, and when I left around 300. So quite a growth curve we went through there. About 9 years in total that I was there. And right now, since about 1.5 to 2 years, I do a lot of advisory work on product and product strategy. And I am, as such, part of Balderton EIR program. I help companies in the Balderton portfolio. So if there's anything product strategy related that you'd like to discuss, feel free to reach out. And my contact details will be at the last slide. All right, before we start on strategy, just a couple of caveats. I like to make things as simple as possible, and that doesn't always work for everyone. So if you find yourself grinding your teeth when I show you my pictures, that it's too simple, it's too simplistic, etc. I realize that it's as simple as possible. I try to make it as simple as possible, but no simpler. And the no simpler, I think, is where we may differ in opinion. I have a very strong bias, of course, in what I've created due to my experience at Booking. So it's a special company, has gone through an extreme growth journey, and that has shaped me and then my convictions as well. So keep that in mind. There's an angle here that I have, and it will have, it has shaped the framework that you will see. All right, let's talk about your business. What is the reason your business exists? I think, aside from some more aspirational reasons, I think in the end, any business, or let's say most businesses, have one objective, and that is to grow. Because if you grow, that means that you are doing something well. You are creating value for your customers, which they return by high conversion, retention, etc., all of those things which makes you grow. And I would even say that your objective is long-term growth. Right? It's not just growing this year, but you are looking, I think most of you are interested in a path that gets you to a 10-year trajectory of growth. There's a bit of discussion around whether growth is about top line, if it's about bottom line, is it about usage, etc. All of that. I'm not going to try and specify that. It used to be about top line. Nowadays, because of the macro circumstances, it's more about bottom line for some companies, etc., etc. In the end, something has to improve, right? And that's the growth that I'm referring to. If you want to grow, you typically need a growth strategy. And where I here say growth, I mean business. It's used, different terms are used. A business strategy, a company strategy. I refer to this as growth strategy. This is what your company, this is the plan of your company to deliver, basically. That typically gets then translated into, this is what you see most common. Once this growth strategy for a business has been established, gets translated into a marketing strategy, a product strategy, and a supply strategy. And we're going to zoom in today on how this translates into product strategy. A little bit more about this. I have the conviction that too often people are trying to artificially separate growth and product strategy. But I think they are 80% the same thing. Product strategy or the product part of it may have more detail. But in the end, the product and great execution of product is a validation of your growth strategy. If your product resonates with your target market, you are doing growth well. Right? So you will find that in my framework, these highly overlap. And I'm not looking to create an artificial boundary between the two. So characteristics of my framework, it's growth focused, like we discussed. I think the objective for most companies, it's highly customer centric. This is where the bias from booking comes in. It's based on some proven stuff that you've seen probably. And I try to keep it as simple as possible. I think the strategy of a company, you should be able to put in 4 slides, no more. And I don't know if you've seen a lot of strategy decks and this type of work or documents, but often people need a lot more writing to make their point. And I think that's probably means that it's not concise and compact enough. I think it applies to companies at any stage. So whether you're early stage growth, etc., I think this framework I've developed works for everyone. And stress again, I'm not trying to create a separation between the growth strategy of your company and product strategy. I treat it as a continuum. All right, what's a reductionist view then of long-term strategy? Well, let's break it up. There's long-term, and long-term means that there is stuff going to happen to us that we didn't anticipate before. And our strategy in that sense, by definition, is speculative. So how do we deal with the stuff that the future throws at us? For that, in my view, we need convictions. What do we do if these kind of things happen? And these are convictions that we stick to. I'll give you examples later. Number 2, there is stuff that's unpredictable, and that's where we need our convictions. But there's stuff there where we decide how much risk we take, how much unpredictability do we introduce ourselves in our future. If you are going to build completely new products only for your business, that means you're introducing a lot of risk. If you're not going to introduce any new products and you're going to do more of the same, that's less risky. Let's zoom in on growth. Do you really deeply understand how your business grows? This is what the strategy should describe, a growth model. And then lastly, how are we going to grow ourselves and how are you going to outgrow the competition? This is what I call differentiation. So these 4 elements should be the 4 slides. And here you see the different artifacts that we'll go through and discuss in more detail. And you'll see that as we go from growth, we'll nicely, fluently, this will flow over into product strategy. So let's start with the first slide, the growth model. Before we do, keep in mind that this is the simplest possible representation, but you would of course use this as a basis for all the other stuff you need strategy for, all the way from road mapping, planning, goal setting, storytelling, marketing. You'll see that one of the main growth drivers that Booking bets on is selection, and that comes back literally. Breadth of selection literally comes back in the PPC advertising. 439 hotels in Amsterdam. So don't think that this is too compact. You can build on top easily. All right, the growth model. You may have heard me talk about this before. This comes from Jim Collins' book Good to Great, and Jeff Bezos supposedly, after speaking to Jim Collins, wrote on a napkin, very early days of Amazon, what the flywheel of growth for Amazon was. And I'm assuming maybe you have seen this, before, but I'll very quickly go through. It starts with a great customer experience. If you give customers a great experience, that will attract a lot of traffic, a lot of interested buyers to your platform. That means the sellers want to be on your platform. That gives you, if all the sellers want to be with you, a lot of selection, a lot of things to choose from for your customers. And that is one of the key inputs to a great customer experience. Now, as you then start to grow, you can actually achieve a lower cost structure. And in Amazon's case, they decide to pass that improved margin on to their customers in the form of lower prices. And this is still how Amazon operates. This is still, and I think any investment you see them making, we'll leave AWS aside for a second, is based on this model. And we have yet to meet a customer that wants to pay more or have less choice. That's famously Bezos as well. So what is that flywheel? It describes the causal relationships between the different drivers of growth for your business. And very important, and I think a great aspect of it as well, is that it describes how growth itself leads to the acceleration of growth. Right? This is the effect that you saw with Amazon here. Lower cost structure leads to lower prices, which feeds back into a great customer experience. This is Vismans' napkin on the right, and that is the Booking.com flywheel, which looks actually quite similar to Amazon as well. But your flywheel is typically, this is a key observation, it's typically not unique to your business. So Booking and Expedia operate on exactly the same flywheel. So if that's the case, if we both have the same growth model, how is one going to outperform the other? Well, that's exactly what your growth strategy is about. And that's why you need conviction and differentiation. One other critical assumption when using the flywheel model as a basis and for the framework that I'm presenting, I believe that in that long term, the interests of your customers and your shareholders are perfectly aligned. Right? If you build great stuff for customers, they will buy more, they will retain better, and that's great for your business because your business will grow. It's a key assumption underlying my model because it means you start your flywheel model with defining best customer experience. A little sidestep on this flywheel model. I could talk about it for hours, but it really helps a lot of things in your business. And we can, let me know if you're interested in discussing this at one point. But it helps you with objective setting, ownership, KPIs, alignment, focus, all of that. So please reach out if you want to know more. All right, that's a flywheel. So now we know how our business grows. We have modeled it. Let's move on to conviction. I've picked out a couple of drivers out of the booking flywheel, and I've listed on the right what kind of convictions Booking had over time around these drivers. So a very deliberate choice, just to pull out some examples of Booking, was to follow agency model. You may not be familiar with the agency model, but in the agency model, the Booking never takes the payment. The OTA never takes the payment and doesn't own inventory, versus Expedia, as you'll see later, came from a model where they bought blocks of rooms, which they then sold on their website. Other things important, I think, Booking very early on had conviction that marketing should be measurable and therefore digital only. And I'll show you a little bit of an anecdote around that as well. Price. Booking has never decided to compete on price. Very principled decision over time. This is changing now, by the way. But initially, Booking actually, because of agency model and the agreements it had with hotels, could not even set the price towards consumers. It's the hotels that decided themselves what price they sold at. An example of this conviction around digital marketing, Arthur Costin is one of the guys that made Booking what it is today, and he got called into a meeting with the Priceline board, which was the company that owned Booking.com, and previously called Priceline, now called Booking Holdings, actually. And the board was concerned about the fact that Booking was getting so much of its traffic and its customers through Google performance marketing, and felt that there was need for diversification. So they asked Arthur to go away, come back, and tell them a story, give them a presentation on how he would do that. And he came back in the next board meeting with one slide presentation. And this was basically that slide. In other words, Arthur felt that we should, if possible, even do more with Google. There was such a high conviction on digital marketing and performance marketing with Google specifically, that if anything, they wanted to spend more in this channel. Another one, conviction around using data to make decisions. For about 2 years, when Booking started to do A/B testing, they did not have a single conversion positive experiment. But they never stopped because they strongly believed in this approach. And what I'm showing you here is the first conversion positive experiment, which may be no surprise, but this really hit hard at Booking. There was a significant lift they drove with this to the point that everybody thought something was broken, that they were getting too many bookings. And you're probably all familiar with this. If you have these convictions lined out, you can then also compare yourself with your competitors. And here you see pre-2012, very important to note, what the different convictions were that the different companies had. And I'm comparing Booking, Expedia, and Airbnb. Airbnb, if you look at demand acquisition, the growth driver, demand acquisition, is very much around brand and direct traffic, kind of the opposite of what Booking chose to do. Expedia is a multi-brand company. They have, I don't know how many different brands out in the US that all work off the same backend. And Booking and Airbnb have clearly chosen to have one single brand. Just a couple of examples. Interestingly, if you look at this now, what is it, 11 years later, it looks more like this. So these convictions over the long term get copied as well, I guess, right? Like now you see what Expedia is doing versus Booking and Airbnb, and most of these are the global leaders. I haven't put Ctrip in, but it would look similarly green. Most of the convictions are converging. So I think most of these large companies strategically have the same convictions now. So they've seen that in this stage, I think everybody was placing their chips on the roulette table with convictions that they had at that time. Over time, this evolves to much more of a race where everybody starts at the same time, has the same equipment, so to say. And now you have to much more out-execute the other. That's conviction. Now onto growth hypothesis. So how are you going to differentiate from competitors, but also from yourself? This is long-term strategy. So how do you intend to change going forward, and as such drive growth for your business? The model I use for this is relatively simple. It's basically a table that lists out your growth hypotheses, which is, and you see it here on the right, structured, testable statement based on assumptions and insights that propose a cause and effect relationship between variables related to business growth. I'll give you some examples in a second. And then a solution is typically the initiative or the investment that you do to confirm, it says here disconfirm as well, but typically you do the investment to confirm your growth hypothesis. So I'll show you an example.
Sorry, David,
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. We've had a question on your slide comparing Airbnb and Booking. So I want to ask it before you move on.
Yes.
James from Lendable has asked, how do you know Airbnb is intuition driven on optimization?
I don't know for sure, but this is the this is what you learn through the informal channels, so to say. This is what you learn from people that have worked at Airbnb and then apply at Booking, for example. There's a different approach there. I'm not saying that I'm not claiming that Airbnb doesn't do experimentation, for example, but they are much more top-down, intuition-led than Booking, which is very much bottom-up culture and experimentation-led.
Makes sense, thank you. And another one while we're at it, so that I don't interrupt you again. We've had a question from Barbara. Why do A/B tests if they're not the basis for decision making, as no conversion positive tests will run for the longest time?
Sorry, could you repeat?
I'll repeat it, and then Barbara, maybe you might need to clarify your question. She's asked, why did...
Should I just jump in? Sorry, I don't know if I got that right, but you were saying that at Booking for the longest time you were running A/B tests, but none of them were conversion positive until that very big uptake. But the conviction was still there that, you know, what you were doing was right. So if you did run tests, but they didn't yield any positive results, like why do them in the first place if you don't take the result as a basis for decision making, basically?
Why did you take the result as a basis for decision making? Basically, the test for the learning from those 2 years of no conversion positive experiments was not that the tests didn't improve the product. The problem was that the changes that they made were too small. They were the effect basically disappeared in the noise until they did something really bold, like the experiment I showed you, and then it stood out. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if I understood it.
Thanks. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I wanted to show you an example of a growth hypothesis, and they're typically always phrased like this: if we do X, then we will see this result because Y, Z, I mean. And incentivization, I'm sure you're all thinking about this. How can you drive growth through incentivization of your customers? Well, Booking has developed, you may be a member of this, a loyalty program called Genius. Basically initially gave you 10% discount on a certain number of hotels. And what you see in the table is the drivers that this solution aims to affect. Right? So any solution you could say that affects a lot of drivers is more interesting than any solution that affects fewer drivers. That's the way you could use this type of view to also prioritize these hypotheses. Another example of hypothesis around brand, which was a highly controversial one because it actually conflicted with a very strong conviction that Booking had around data-driven decision-making. And so this was the first, you see it on the bottom right, the first TV commercial we did was in the US because Booking was struggling to capture share in the US. And this is the way the OTAs, the travel companies in the US compete. There's a lot of spend on the TV. I remember being in the US and doing a workout and saw that on the TV, I think there were 7 different travel companies, one after the other, advertising there. It was incredible. So Booking wanted to try this as well. Interestingly, it goes against a very strong conviction. It was culturally very problematic. And still today, even though Booking spends money on TV advertising, primarily in the US, it's not proven that it drives growth, right? You can guess from that statement on what side I am when it comes to whether Booking should do this or not. And then the last one I wanted to give as an example, because I've been very close to this one, is an application called Pulse, which is an application for the hotel partners. And the thesis here is that if we create a certain level of convenience for the hotel partners, the drivers that will be affected consequently is selection and availability. So if it's easier to work with booking for hotel partners, they will retain. And this is great for customers because that means broader selection, better availability. This is also positioned a little bit as a Trojan horse, because there's one thing that customers don't like, and that's waiting for answers. And until we had this in place, customers had to go through customer service if they had a question to the hotel, and customer service would approach the hotel, and then you had this like ping pong triangle, which could take a lot of time before people got their answer. And what we wanted was a channel where the customer could speak directly to the hotel. But if we would have positioned an app with the hotel that said, this app is going to allow customers to directly reach out to you, no hotel would have wanted that app, because that's actually one of the benefits. They see a booking doing that, right? Which is not, again, great for customer experience. So we started the app very simple. It only showed you the bookings you got that day, and it would give you a little sound when the booking came in, right? And this in itself, just this continuous flow of information from booking around the state of your business on booking, and later all the controls that we put in, all the tools that we put in to manage your presence on booking, that is what hotels wanted. And then later we built in the messaging capability. So now everybody has the app, and now we bring the ability for customers to talk directly to the hotels. Hence the Trojan horse. And in the end, and I'm convinced this will have an effect on demand acquisition. And demand acquisition here means if we retain customers better because we give them a better experience, that means that our blended ROI in marketing improves, because people come back direct versus through a paid channel. All right, last slide on risk. This basically tries to plot the different initiatives, the different solutions that you came up with in the previous slide on this matrix. And I'm sure some of you have seen this before. I think it's a model from the 1965, even somewhere that year. But I like it a lot. I think it clarifies your product portfolio and risk taking in a very simple way. So very quick. If you are working on market penetration, so getting market share by doing discounting, for example, you are selling the same product in the same market, but you're trying to get growth from that same market. If you believe you need to build a new product that you can serve that same market with, it goes to the top right quadrant. If you believe the same product should be sold in another market, for example, booking going to Australia, where it wasn't present for a long time, actually, that's bottom left. And then bottom right is new market, new product. That would be booking connected trip strategy, which we can talk about in a bit. Really key here is that the more you move to bottom right, the higher the risk. Right? The higher the risk in that product or that new market, new product strategy materializing, because it's new and you have to solve for both product market fit and product channel fit. A product channel fit means you have a channel through which you can sell this new product at an ROI that's economically viable. There's a lot of good ideas. Many of them cannot find product channel fit, cannot find an economical way of selling it to customers, acquiring customers. I put in the solutions we spoke about a little bit before. So Genius, the loyalty program, is clearly same audience, same market, but a new product. Pulse, same thing, the app for the hotels. same hotel partners, but a new product. And then TV advertising was developing a new market in the US, in particular for the same product that we already offer. I guess you get it. And then differentiation, Connected Trip is Booking's idea to become a one-stop shop for travel. And you could argue whether it's the full differentiation or it's somewhere more close to the top or maybe to the left. But this is a full new proposition and tries to solve for not just the hotel part of the travel, but all the bookings that people do. And this is very risky and very difficult. And I can personally attest to that, that it is, because this I've worked on the last 2 to 3 years and booking, and this was very, very difficult to get off the ground. That's another presentation, but the fact that there was no marketing channel that we knew how to use for this, the fact that we had never done flights, as an example, the combination of those things just makes it very complicated. And then also nice, I thought, to plot in some of the terms that you're familiar with in defining product strategy typically. So top left is very much optimization of your existing product and market. Top right, bottom left is really innovation, and then the double innovation, so to say, sits bottom right. That's why it's so risky. And in terms of product channel fit and product market fit, on the bottom right, you're clearly trying to find product market. Top right, sorry, clearly trying to find product market fit. Bottom left, you're clearly trying to find product channel fit. And again, why it's so risky and difficult, you have to find product channel fit and product market fit, which is it's almost the same as starting a new business. And we know how successful, what the success rate of new businesses is. Summarizing then, so we saw the 4 different artifacts that are used, 4 different models. The first one is basically defining how growth works for your business. It's not unique typically for your business, but at least everybody, it's a great exercise to go through and align on, so that you are sure that everybody thinks the same way around this. Then your convictions actually set some boundaries on the solution space that you will come up in the next step. So booking, we will only do, I gave you the example, we only do digital marketing. We want another example, we will not own our own inventory. Those are very principled decisions that booking stuck to for a very long time. Then you define the differentiation against yourself over time, but also against your competitors by means of the growth hypothesis in this typical format I showed you. And then lastly, to get a good understanding of the risk, the nature of the risk that you're taking and the distribution over the different efforts, this Ansoff matrix helps a lot in visualizing and understanding that. And then back a bit to growth versus product strategy. I told you I believe it's, if you have a well-defined growth strategy, that's 80% of your product strategy right there. And that sits in the following. I think flywheel and convictions give you very clear focus on where to build product and also define the solution space. So they give you boundaries. If you're in booking, my idea in product would be, we're going to drop A/B testing, or we are going to do TV advertising. And let's forget that we did in the end, but like that, that's the solution space, that the boundaries that get created. Then on the right, once you have your growth hypothesis set and you understand where they sit in new versus existing, you've basically defined your product portfolio, and you have a very clear view on what your risk appetite is as well. So if you're all bottom right in this matrix that I mentioned, you're going to have a very unpredictable future, right? It's very volatile and speculative by definition, and that's risk you introduce yourself. If you're all top left, it's going to be much more predictable, but maybe with too limited payoff. So finding that balance, I guess, is key. And I can say that Booking was 80% top left and 20% of its investments were bottom right. You are much more earlier stage businesses. You should probably be the other way around. And then automatically, I would think your product strategy emerges, which is basically an overview of your growth hypotheses, the solutions that come with them, which growth drivers are you targeting, and keep in mind, in the end, all of these growth drivers, if you started out with customer experience as the starting point of your growth model, they will all positively affect customer experience, right? Then you get your risk view, and you can add the columns that you see here around what's the investment that product specifically needs to do for this growth hypothesis, and what's the size of that? Is it a lot of work or is it little work? Again, very reductionist view, but I believe that if you're unable to express your strategy, both growth all the way into product, if you're unable to express in this simple way, it's probably not concise or well aligned enough. That brings us to the end. How I can help if you are interested in drawing this up. I'm happy to share the templates and also guide you through. Give you some friendly fire on the decisions you made, or in particular, which I think the most important step is number 1. What does your growth model look like? Do analysis on the work that you do through this type of model. By the way, this doesn't have to be through this model, of course. I'm very keen to help on people thinking through their strategy and seeing if it's consistent and holds up. I promised the survey results last. There was a big mix, so people indicated that they used a mix of, I think, 3 to 4 different frameworks, where vision-led product strategy came out as the most used, but very much in combination with jobs to be done. And I think if there's interest in this, I think it could be really interesting to have a session on the vision-led product strategy approach with somebody who's an expert at that, given that so many people are using this. Maybe we can learn something.